Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the studio for this week's video. We're gonna do another Q&A this week. I had a bunch of leftover questions from the last Q&A video I did, so I used those. Links to all the people asking questions are below in the description, so if you would like to help me make the next Q&A video, feel free to ask anything below in the comments, anything sculpture related of course, and you'll get your social media or whatever you want linked in the description below. I'm also trying out a different color grade today, so let me know what you think about the way the video looks. Do you prefer the new one or the old one? I'd love to hear what you think. And maybe check out the Skillshare link in the description below as well. You'll get a free month of Skillshare and I get a little something sent my way as well. So it's a win-win situation for the both of us. The footage you'll be watching is mostly on clay application. It'll mostly be of the back and how it evolves slowly from the block-in to a finished surface. There will be no time lapses today, only real-time footage, so you can see how slow this process really is. It's something I rarely show because it is so slow, and every sculpture would take about 100 videos or even many hundred videos if I were to show the process at this pace. So it's a bit of a rare sight on this channel, I think. Pay close attention to how I use the tools that I use, both while adding clay and while cleaning up the surface. I think there's a lot to learn just from watching someone do this sort of work. And it's very, very difficult to talk about it too much. So a Q&A video on top, I think, should be interesting and should be good for you if you're interested in learning sculpture. I hope you enjoy it. First question comes from Jeffrey King. And Jeffrey King asks, do you believe that artistic ability of any sort is something innate or is it something developed? In other words, is it talent or is it learned? And I'm not quite sure how to answer this one, as I don't want anyone to feel like they shouldn't be trying hard because it doesn't come easy to them, so seemingly that means they don't have talent. So I'll start off by saying that dedication and work ethic is extremely important, and it's the most important differentiator. And it's never too late to try. It doesn't matter how old you are. I first started sculpting when I was 20 years old, and I had spent very little time doing anything really that artistic before that. So it's definitely possible to get at least decent at sculpture, even if you don't start at a very, very young age. Or even if you're seemingly not reeking of talent or potential. With that said, yes, I do believe there is something like artistic ability or talent. But it's not dexterity in the hands or something physical. Nobody's eyes are sharper. Well, obviously, somebody's eyes are sharper, but you can easily correct this with glasses or contact lenses. People often say you need to train your eye. I don't really think that's what they mean. That's certainly not what I mean when I say you need to train your eye. If anything, your eye won't get sharper by looking hard at stuff. If anything, they'll get worse after staring too much, You'll ruin your eyesight that way. So what I think they mean when they say you need to train your eye is that they mean to train how to think so you can know what to look for or how to look for it. And some people do seem to get this easier than others, but I think it's a mental thing perhaps. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline to step back from your work and observe it seems. Most people don't do this naturally. They all only want to stand on top of their work and work, while the real key is to step back and observe. And to maintain a center line running through your portrait or the body of your sculpture, whatever it may be, which sounds easy enough, is nigh on impossible for plenty of people. Most people just lose it, and even if you tell them over and over, they very rarely are able to do it for some absurd reason. So I think it's more of a discipline thing than anything. And I think some people, and most people, unless trained, seem to struggle with discipline. In the beginning, everyone struggles with what question to ask yourself about the work. Then some people seem to stop asking the questions that are needed when the answers becomes too painful or difficult to handle, and so they don't progress. And I think a lot of it is will as well. Are you willing to relentlessly pursue perfection and ask all those questions that need to be asked, or are you willing to settle for good enough? If you have a glaring weakness in your arsenal of tools, are you willing to put in the work to correct that weakness? This seems to be extremely tough for people to grasp, and I guess understandably so. It's painful and it's not fun to face the reconstruction necessary in a portrait with a crooked centerline. Or it's not fun to resculpt a hand that you've sculpted too big. So I think there's a big difference between people exactly here. Some people force and will their sculptures into existence, while others just let it happen. Some people are trucks, and some people are trailers. Some are in control of the process, and others are just along for the ride. And the difference in their work might not be as extreme as you would think, but one's work might last forever, while the others will quickly fade into the masses. I believe you can bring almost anyone, not everyone, but almost anyone, to a level of competence. Their work might not be great, but it will be good, passable, and it can even be quite interesting depending on their personality and the ideas that they put forth. And then there are some who bring something special that, when combined with teaching and practice, makes work that is great. Those people are kind of like forged blades. They only need a little bit of sharpening to become extremely effective. But I think competence is at least achievable for most of us. And then posterity will sort out who's who. Next question is less heavy and a little bit more technical, which is nice after that one. It's from Ivy Adams. Do you always use an armature, and do you always bronze the sculptures? And the answer to that is yes. I always use an armature because of the process I employ. My goal is to always make a mold of my clay figures. Molds to be used in casting the sculpture into other materials. So an armature is not only often necessary with the figures that I make, but I can use one and not have to worry about the sculpture collapsing on me, because I'll know I make a mold of it and it doesn't need to be fired in an oven. So the armature is of no concern really. I can make it whatever I want it to be as long as it doesn't stick out of my sculpture. And about bronze. The goal of all my work is to eventually be bronze. But I can't afford it, so it either takes someone buying a piece they've seen in clay or resin and wanting one in bronze and paying for it for me to afford making one. But it's the end goal of every sculpture I make, at least for now. Maybe I'll get into having them carved in marble at some point. Next question is from Carol Haderman. What do you think about the fact that figurative art is considered less valuable or artistic than abstract art? And I don't really know. I guess I think it's pretty lame. Though I think that, like all of us, have different taste in food and music, so we should be allowed to have different taste in art as well, and all art should be considered valuable. And so I have no qualms with abstract art. I just don't really enjoy making it. I don't feel proud of what I've made the few times I've tried making something abstract. I guess I enjoy figurative sculpture for the process and craftsmanship involved. And I think figurative art is up and coming though. I really believe so. People are tired of having the only thing they feel when they go to the museums be, I could do that, or I'm provoked by this. There's definitely room for art that provokes, but there should be a little bit more depth than that to the art that's being elevated into the limelight. At least I think so. Let me go on a little bit of a rant here about art that's shallow. We have this sculpture in Norway outside the central station in Oslo, and it's of a Nazi swastika getting crushed by a hammer. Now, what do you think that sculpture is about? It's about Norwegian communists fighting the Nazis during the Second World War, and they didn't get much attention for doing so after the war. They get kind of swept under the rug because they were communist. But what a simple and childish way of saying exactly that. It's the way they've done it. It's so simple, it's so easy. It's more like a motivational poster on the internet. There's no depth to it at all. And I think this is a lot of modern art in general, sadly. Not all of it, of course, but a lot of it just lacks any depth. And no ambiguity, nothing is left up to the viewer. And it's more fitting as a Facebook post than as art, I think. In general, I find a lot of contemporary art suffers from this, even figurative work. There's this famous exhibition in Norway called the Autumn Exhibition, and there was a sculpture there at this Autumn Exhibition from a model that was transgender, or maybe he was gay, I can't remember, and he was a Muslim dancer. And that is the whole point of the sculpture, was that there was a transgender or gay Muslim dancer, and that was very, brave of the model to pose or something like that. And I agree that it is, and I commend him for doing so, and he should have the opportunity to do so without any trouble at all. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be allowed to pose or anything like that, but such a simple political statement that most of us agree with, at least most of us who are looking at figurative art. I don't think there's anybody who don't think that somebody shouldn't be allowed to pose because of their sexual orientation or their religion. I don't know. I just think that sort of work is super shallow, very uninteresting to me. A simple political statement, really. Again, like a poster. Or sculpting transgender people with both female breasts and a penis. And maybe I'm just too naive to understand why that is like a big thing, but that seems about like as lame and as simple a statement that you can possibly make. Is there no other way to express these sorts of things? Something that's a little bit more sophisticated than that? Something that's a little bit less like a political statement or a one-liner, you know? Anyways, that's a bit of a rant about contemporary art. I think most of it lacks any depth, and it would be better served as motivational posters on Facebook. Rant over. Okay, on to something a little bit different. This is from Jay Cormican. What made you decide to have him have no hair on his head? He's talking about the sculpture that I'm sculpting in this video. As you can see, there's no hair on his head. Number one reason, I guess, is the model is pretty bald, or he has the occasional short haircut, but he often has no hair at all. He shaves his head. However, of course, if I wanted a character with hair, I could have made it up or found a model with hair and just sculpted his hair. So there are other reasons. The sculpture references several quite religious themes and some personal experiences as well. When we arrive from the womb, we often do so with little to no hair. The birth scene in The Matrix, where Neo wakes up into the real world, is a sort of science fiction version of a religious rebirth, where one reawakens to the real world, to a different world, or with a different perspective on the world. And Neo wakes up with no hair. Once we reach the end of the video series on this project, I'll do a longer, more proper video on what this sculpture is about maybe, but I can touch on some of the reasons I made the sculpture this way here. I made some changes and adjustments to my own life last summer, which severely altered the way I see things and how the world responds to me. And it was kind of life-changing. It changed me so much, and I feel way more at peace with myself because of it. This sculpture had been on my mind for years, for a very long time, but with little to no true context to make it, I didn't feel particularly compelled to do so. And when I adjusted the way I live, it became very clear that this sculpture all of a sudden had context and needed to be made. Every time we ask, we learn, and every time we learn, old parts of us die and float away. This happens gradually and slowly, almost unnoticeable. But sometimes a very important question gets asked, and the answer is not easy to swallow, it's not easy to implement, but once we've asked, we know the answer to be true, and the answer is the only way forward. And so we remake ourselves all the time, and as a visual artist, a sculptor, I felt the need to represent my remaking in clay. You have to be somewhat of a narcissist to believe that your perspective is worth sharing with the world. I think the idea of a question leading to a painful answer, constituting a remaking of the self, is universal enough, an integral part of what it means to be human, to be worth representing in clay form. That's it for this week's episode. I know I said I would do a video on painting resin sculptures with acrylic colors this week, but I've been swamped with work, and so a Q&A is all you're gonna get. I'll do the painting resin sculptures in acrylic next week, I promise. Leave some questions below in the comments if you have them for future Q&A videos. I love doing these and learn a lot myself from attempting to answer people's questions, so ask your questions below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I encourage you to check out my Patreon page. I give feedback and critiques on people's work, and we talk about whatever you need help with in your sculpting endeavors. There are several rewards, one of them being the maquette for this sculpture you've seen me working on today. So check it out, the link is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for a new video next Thursday. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and share it with your friends and family. It really helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching, stay creative, and I hope to see you in the next one.